A damp, freezing morning, January the 8th, 1815, stand in knee-deep, stinking swamp mud miles outside New Orleans, a wealthy port city. Thick white fog drifts slowly over the muck. Through it, you hear the terrifying steady beat of military drums. Look forward and see thousands of British soldiers, the same men who just defeated Napoleon Bonaparte. Dressed in spotless red coats and bright white crossbelts, they march in perfect, unstoppable lockstep. Now, look at the men beside you in the American trenches. This is no professional army. This is a ragtag, unorganized mob, French-speaking aristocrats, rough Kentucky frontiersmen, in coonskin caps, free black men, gripping loaded muskets, Choctaw, native warriors, and genuine wanted pirates, standing next to massive iron cannons. Leading this bizarre band is a tall, gaunt man, coughing up blood. A lead bullet from a bar jewel is still lodged deep in his chest. This fearsome mob is about to unleash one of the most devastating, one-sided slaughters in history on the British Army. Today, we dive into the bloody mud of the Battle of New Orleans. We'll explore General Andrew Jackson's dark, violent past, a secret deal with an infamous pirate king, and the bitter irony of a brutal battle fought after the war was officially over. To understand this absurd battle, we go back to the strategic disasters of late 1814. As we saw last episode, the British burned Washington, D.C. to the ground, humiliating America completely. But the British Empire wanted far more than a few burning government buildings. It wanted absolute control of North America. To get it, they aimed their massive naval fleet at the throat of America's economy, New Orleans. New Orleans was the critical gateway to the Mississippi River. If the British seized it, they delock America's entire West away, forever, cut off all trade, and starve the young nation into submission. Britain sent a huge fleet of over 10,000 elite veteran soldiers to take the city. The job of defending New Orleans fell to a man made of pure anger and pure violence, Major General Andrew Jackson. Jackson was no elegant, educated politician like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington. An orphan, born in the rough backwoods of the Carolinas, he grew up in unbearable poverty. As a young boy, during the Revolutionary War, Jackson was captured by the British. A British officer ordered the boy to clean his muddy boots. When young Andrew refused, the officer drew his heavy steel sword and slashed the boy's face and hands, leaving permanent ugly scars. Soon after, Jackson's mother and brother died from diseases contracted in British prison camps. From that moment, Andrew Jackson harbored a burning, unquenchable hatred for the British Empire in his soul. He grew up to be a lawyer, a wealthy planter, and a fierce, utterly ruthless military commander. He was famous for his terrifying temper. In 1806, a man named Charles Dickinson insulted Jackson's wife. Jackson challenged him to a duel. Dickinson was known as the best pistol shot in the state. When the duel began, Dickinson fired first, hitting Jackson square in the chest. Any normal man would have dropped dead, but Andrew Jackson had an iron, almost demonic will. Bleeding profusely, he stood perfectly still, raised his pistol, steady-aimed coolly, and shot his opponent dead. That bullet stayed in Jackson's lung for the rest of his life, causing constant agonizing pain and frequent blood coughs. This was the man standing between the British Empire and New Orleans. When Jackson arrived in the city in late 1814, he found it in total panic. Local politicians were considering surrendering to the British without a fight. Jackson immediately declared martial law. He threatened to hang anyone who tried to give up. He needed soldiers badly, so he recruited anyone who could hold a gun. He signed up 2 battalions of free black men, paying them exactly the same as white soldiers, a revolutionary idea at the time. He hired local Choctaw warriors to scout the swamps. He brought in thousands of tough, dirty militiamen from Tennessee and Kentucky men who spent their lives shooting squirrels in the woods and never missed a target. But Jackson had a huge fatal weakness. He had almost no artillery, no heavy cannons to stop British ships. To fix this, Jackson was forced to make a deal with the devil. Hidden deep in the swamps south of New Orleans was a massive smuggling empire, ruled by a clever, charismatic French pirate, Jean Lafitte. Lafitte controlled a private army of ruthless pirates and a huge arsenal of smuggled cannons. The British had secretly offered Lafitte a fortune in gold to guide them through the dangerous swamps. Lafitte took the British maps, told them he needed time to think, and immediately brought the intel straight to Andrew Jackson. Jackson initially despised the pirates, calling them hellish bandits, but Jackson was a pragmatist. He offered Lafitte and his men a full unconditional pardon for all their past crimes if they fought for America. The pirates, agreed Jackson, now had his heavy cannons. Jackson chose a brilliant strategic spot for his final stand. He deployed his army along the Rodriguez Canal, a narrow, muddy waterway about 5 miles south of the city. To his right was the massive, fast-moving Mississippi River. To his left was an impenetrable, thick cypress swamp. The British could not flank him. They would be forced to march straight ahead into his gunfire. Jackson ordered his men to build a huge defensive wall behind the canal. Using thick mud-heavy logs and massive bales of cotton, they constructed a mile-long barricade. They mounted Jean Lafitte's pirate cannons all along the line. They loaded their muskets tight and waited in the cold rain. On the morning of January 8, 1815, British General Edward Pakenham made the catastrophic arrogant mistake. He was convinced the American defenders were just a pathetic, cowardly mob of farmers who'd run at the sight of professional European soldiers. Pakenham ordered a massive frontal assault across the open muddy sugar fields. As the fog lifted, the British army marched forward in perfect tight formation. But someone in the British command made a deadly logistical error. The soldiers, who were supposed to carry wooden ladders to climb Jackson's mud wall, forgot them entirely. When the British reached the American line, they found themselves trapped in the muddy ditches, utterly unable to climb the slippery wall. They stood there, completely exposed to enemy fire. Behind the wall, Andrew Jackson gave the order to fire. The American line erupted in a massive, deafening burst of flame and smoke. Lafitte's pirate cannons unleashed devastating grapeshot, tearing huge bloody holes in the British ranks. Kentucky and Tennessee riflemen, safe behind the cotton bales, coolly picked off British officers, one by one, with terrifyingly precise aim. This was not a battle, it was a mechanical industrial slaughter. General Pakenham rode forward desperately, trying to rally his terrified men. His horse was shot dead instantly. He mounted a second horse. A single American grapeshot hit him in the knee. Another shattered his spine. The British commander died screaming in the mud. The British 93rd Highlanders, a famous, proud Scottish regiment, stood bravely in the open field, refusing to retreat without orders. They were systematically, completely annihilated. In less than 30 minutes, the entire British assault collapsed. When the smoke finally cleared, the battlefield was a horrifying sight. Over 2,000 British soldiers lay dead, wounded, or captured in the bloody mud. What about American casualties? Behind the wall of mud and cotton, Jackson's wildly diverse army suffered only about 70 losses. It was one of the most lopsided, astonishing victories in military history. But the saddest, most baffling irony of the entire event is this. As thousands bled to death in the Louisiana mud, they had no idea the war was already over. Thousands of miles away, in the quiet Belgian city of Ghent, American and British diplomats had signed a formal peace treaty on December 24, 1814, more than 2 weeks before the battle began. Because transatlantic communication took weeks, news of the peace treaty didn't reach New Orleans until long after the slaughter. The men who died on that battlefield died for nothing. The battle changed absolutely nothing about the war's borders or official outcome. Yet, the Battle of New Orleans transformed America's psychological soul forever. When news of Jackson's miraculous victory reached Washington, D.C., the nation erupted in an overwhelming, joyous wave of nationalism. Americans didn't just feel like they survived the war. They felt like they decisively defeated the mighty British Empire. Andrew Jackson instantly became a living god, the ultimate symbol of the tough, unyielding American frontiersman. America entered a period of immense national pride, known as the Era of Good Feelings. Political parties stopped fighting for a time. The nation was united, confident, and expanding fast. But this time of peace was only an illusion. Beneath the surface, a new power was brewing. As politicians celebrated in Washington, a strange, fearsome machine was being built on the rivers of the West. It was a huge wooden boat that needed no wind, no sails. It spewed fire, belched thick black smoke, and moved with the massive steady roar of a mechanical beast. The steam engine had arrived in America. It was about to completely transform the economy, create unimaginable wealth, and at the same time, lock the chains of slavery forever around the South. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.